Hi there, everybody. Luke Matty here with Sandstone Care. Hope everybody is doing well. I have here with me Susanne Navas, life coach. She was able to come here to our office in Bethesda, see some of our space here, and talk to some of our clinicians. But I'd like for her to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what you do. Suzanne?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me here.
Of course.
Yeah, I've really loved having the tour here and learning more about what Sandstone does. So,
Thank you.
yeah, so I am a life coach and a recovery coach, and I work with basically people, adults and teenagers who feel stuck in some way, feel overwhelmed, want to perhaps create some change in their life but don't really know where to start. And so maybe it's examining habits, and I guess that's where the recovery coaching comes in, because sometimes people know that maybe they have an unhealthy behavior, an unhealthy relationship with alcohol or other drug or even food or work or whatever it is, and so I help them examine that, get started in the right direction.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So I believe you mentioned that you had recently relocated from Connecticut,
That's
correct?
right, yeah.
So you've been in the area, Northern Virginia area, for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
You also work with a partner of ours, Sagebrush. So tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Yeah, so Sagebrush is, they have residential treatment, and then they also have outpatient. And so I basically work mostly in the residential, teaching yoga for sobriety, and doing some coaching, helping the therapists run groups and so on. So I'd never been in a treatment facility before, and never worked in the industry. So it's definitely been extremely fulfilling. I absolutely love it, and as much as I help the clients, but they also every day just remind me what the human spirit can, how resilient we are, and how how much is, because I've been immersed in brain health, learning about brain health, learning about trauma and so on, and every day I just am amazed at how much we can still survive, traumatic circumstances, even just what, when somebody comes to treatment, it's not, I joke about it, I'm like, yeah, no one gets here on a winning streak,
Right.
So some of the stories that you hear and the conditions that we witness, it really, sometimes it breaks my heart, but it always inspires me.
Yeah.
So it's really the most fulfilling work, I believe.
Yeah. No, that's great, and just talking about how important it is to connect the mind and the body through the yoga with recovery, specifically in our line of work here at Sandstone Care, but just in general. And thank you for sharing about Sagebrush and the work you do there. I'd like to just kind of jump back a little bit to your experience with life coaching and recovery coaching. Can you share a little bit about some of the tools that you use there? What maybe some of the folks are struggling with in that life coaching role that you deal with?
Yeah, so I work with teens as well as with adults.
Great.
And so very often with the teens, it's very stressful to live today. We have so much information bombarding us, and so many expectations from everywhere. From, if we're a teenager, it's coming from our parents, it's coming from our peers, from our schools and so on. And so it can feel really overwhelming. And at the same time, I believe, because naturally as a child, I'm taking in the adults, and very usually well-intentioned adults, but and I'm a parent, so I recognize this. I have a 15 and an 18-year-old, and so I know how hard it is as a parent to know what your child is capable of, at the same time know what what pitfalls might happen, the kind of mistakes, and we've all made mistakes, so we want to maybe prevent our kids from experiencing that. And it's a very competitive world right now. And so I think that sometimes, I always say that the children are the canaries in the coal mine. When something isn't working right with a child, or collectively with our children, which we're seeing now with, more children dying by suicide than even in automobile accidents, for example. And, the median age of onset of anxiety is 11. And so I believe that it's our children telling us that culturally something is out of whack. And I don't think this is news to anyone. We all recognize this. And so I work with teens to help them learn. A lot of what I do is with mindfulness. And of course, working with teens, we also have to address the caregivers, the parents. I work with a lot of adults to also, whether or not it has to do with their kids, but, parents, a lot of us are under a lot of stress too. And I think that a lot of it has to do with this perception of everybody else has it figured out. If I'm just going to go by my peers and friends, I call it fake book, fake book posts, then it's very easy for me to think, oh my gosh, everyone else has, everything figured out and their life is perfect. And here I am, I don't even know what I'm making for dinner tonight. And, whatever else the stress is, we're all worried about our kids. Is this a normal life, is stressful thing, or is this something where we need to get professional help? I think a lot of parents struggle with that. So that's some of what I do. And then I also help people who are just feeling, to boil it down to the fact that they have prioritized everyone and everything else and let go of their self-care. So maybe now they're relying a little bit too much on alcohol, or on, they're not working out. Maybe they've let go of their spiritual practice and they're feeling more stress. Maybe their relationships are not where they would have hoped to be. And so in general, they're just feeling like they're in a rut. And so I help them with that.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that. Just two things I want to comment on briefly. I know that social media is rough. It is for me, being 40 years old, but I'm sure it's
40?
even. Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh.
So just with me being a little bit older, but definitely with the younger generation now, and for me, it's always seeing others on, whether it be Facebook or whatever, but that's just a snapshot in time of their life. And it's tough. I'm learning to kind of know that that's just one instant in their life, and they've got other things going on, and I'm trying to compare my insides to what I see on their outsides, which is very difficult. So thanks for talking about that. And then secondly, you talked about how important the family unit is, and we talked about this off camera about how important that is here at Sandstone, and how much we involve the families in recovery, and because it's a family unit that is trying to recover with substance use and with mental health as well. That we can package those together, but learning about those diseases and those afflictions, and how to grow and to heal and to support one another in a healthy way is very important. It sounds like to you as well as it is to Sandstone Care as well. So thank you so much for sharing all that. That's awesome to hear, and it sounds like you're doing some amazing work with individuals on one-on-one basis, but then also working with more of a group setting at Sagebrush, which is great. I love the facility there. I've been down several times, and they've been very welcoming, and love what's going on there. Anything else you want to add, or anything we didn't hit on?
Well, since I have a platform here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing I would like to mention is something that I think needs to be talked about more in recovery is, I think there's this myth that you don't need to get sober or clean or whatever until you hit the proverbial rock bottom.
Right.
And I think that is an antiquated approach, and I think it's extremely harmful. And so what I like to invite people to do is consider that, well, we know that the World Health Organization recently announced that no amount of alcohol is healthy.
Yeah, I did see that.
And so, yeah, and so when we look at it from a physical standpoint as far as health goes, and then certainly mental health or brain, what any amount of this does to us, we don't need to get to the point where we are getting DUIs or losing our jobs or getting pancreatitis or anything like that to basically really examine, has alcohol become a crux for me? You know, has it become a way to unwind? Am I using it at every single opportunity to celebrate or socialize? And so I think it's really, it's important to look at that, because I know we have a huge problem with opiate use and overdose in our country. And we have a huge problem with alcohol, and alcohol is related to 88,000 deaths per year, at least last year, and I believe opiates was 70,000. And so I think it's especially, I have a 15 and an 18-year-old, and you know, we have this conversation very often, how few people that we know, my husband and I quit drinking, but how few other people we know who don't drink, and even they with their peers. And so I think it's on us as adults to role model and to be honest, starting with ourselves, and to recognize that, you know what, sometimes often it's better to quit while we're ahead.
Right.
Because then, as I point out to people, you know, in the treatment, and even, you know, with just in conversation, that if I quit while I'm ahead, then I'm still in control. I'm the one making the decisions. It's not being imposed on me by, you know, a diagnosis, or by a judge, or by a family member doing an intervention, or by, you know, all the money that we lose, you know, through that kind of stuff. So that's basically what I wanted to add to the conversation. Thank you.
No, I love that, and thanks for sharing that with everybody. It reminded me of a conversation I had last night at dinner with a small group. Somebody was mentioning the fact that you know, and they were sober for a while, but they went out to a bar, and the question is always, why don't you drink?
Yeah.
And he wants to change that conversation to, why do you drink? But it's so prevalent in our society. It's almost like the folks that don't drink, especially in those social settings, are the outliers. So, and to your point earlier, no real benefits from drinking. So, you know, why is that? Why are people who don't drink not the norm, if that makes any sense? I think I just used a double negative there. But
well, you know, I heard somebody from the CDC said, he was quoted in a book I read last year, that where we are with alcohol is where we were with cigarettes 40 years ago. Yeah. So that is my dream, you know, that maybe with more and more people questioning the things, the assumptions that we have about alcohol, which are basically fed by, you know, it's billions of dollars are made in alcohol, and then, you know, it's a cultural thing. And even doctors, you know, yesterday or a couple days ago, I was talking to a new client, and she said, I have a special needs child, and my doctor recognized how stressful this was for me, so he advised me to have a glass of wine at the end of the day, every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's there's a lot of just ignorance around it. And so I think the more, and you know, I know it's hard because a lot of people who don't drink are anonymous about it. Right. And so there's that whole other level of I think, perhaps disservice to the public done by the anonymity, but that's a whole other subject. Right. But I think that those of us who are comfortable talking about it, but more than anything, just being the change, I think, is the best thing, because we don't want to, be all preachy and annoying either.
Right. Agreed. So thank you so much for your time today.
You.
It was great to get to know you a little bit better, and for our viewers to know you a little bit better. So kind of as we wrap up, if you just want to share a little bit about where people can find you, any contact information you want to share with folks out there.
Sure, thanks. So I have a website, therebootcoach.net, therebootcoach.net, and there I have a blog, and I have some resources, and yes, that's probably the best place. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but therebootcoach.net is probably the easiest.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. And we actually had a co-host, but unfortunately he's taking a nap. The 8.5-week-old Bruno, the chocolate lab. But so unfortunately he wasn't able to join us, but maybe next time. So thank you so much again for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, Luke.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.